This presentation is about the Southern African usage of English. My task was to find out whether a region of my choice has a preference regarding British English or American English. I decided upon Southern Africa as my region, including the countries South Africa, Zimbabwe and Zambia. The experiment involves using World Wide Web corpora of English from these particular countries and comparing them with UK and US English World Wide Web corpora. Readers of the Journal of the English Academy of Southern Africa may be interested in this video, as it will present accurate results demonstrating which English is preferred by South Africa. Before the experiment, I predicted that the Southern African region would prefer British English, as I am aware of the colonisation of South Africa and about the apartheid, which both involved a great influx of British people in authority and of British English usage. At one stage, English and Dutch were the official languages of South Africa, and in 1974, the Afrikaans Medium Decree required the use of Afrikaans and English on an equal basis in high schools. Step 1 of my method was to select my 3 countries. Then I used corpora of around 200,000 words each, which were collected by Leeds University. This was done by using World Wide Web sources to gather selections of contemporary English texts from a wide range of countries. Web Bootcat was then used to collect around 200,000 words of web page text from a specific country by restricting the Web Bootcat search to the specified national domain. I then came up with a list of a few features that appear frequently in British English, but not American English. Here is a frequency list for words more commonly used in British English than American English. The results do not show linguistic preferences, rather places in the UK or lexicon that is preferred or more frequently used in Britain. Instead, I decided to use words that have linguistic differences, in this case spelling, as spelling differences are easier to decipher with single words than grammatical preferences, for example. I decided on the words colour, centre and neighbour, as all 3 have a preferred spelling in British English and American English. I started by downloading the first UK corpus, and then I pressed Ctrl and F to find my first word. I then typed in the word and the frequency came up next to it. As you can see here, the spelling of COLOUR has a frequency of 20 in the first UK corpus. I then did the same thing with the American spelling, COLOR. However, there were no matches for the word colour, only words with colour in them, which do not count, so this was recorded as 0. I repeated this process with all of the chosen features, with the UK and US spellings, with all 10 of the UK corpora. I then carried out the same procedure using the US corpora. This image shows that there were no matches for UK spelling, COLOUR, in this UK corpus. And then I did the same with the US spelling, COLOR, with the US corpora. I then did the same with all the features, with all 10 US corpora. Here are 3 tables of the results for the frequencies of the 3 features in the UK corpora. The left-hand columns of each table show the frequencies of the American spellings, and the middle column shows the frequencies of the British spellings. The right column shows the ratio between the 2. As you can see here, the ratios of all but one of the frequencies are below 50. The ratio of 100 is an anomaly, as there was no result for the English spelling, but one match for the US spelling, and because this word was not frequent in that particular corpus in either spelling, it does not give a fair representation. Here are 3 tables of the results for the frequencies of the 3 features in the US corpora. As shown here, the ratios of all the frequencies are above 50. So the results show that 1. Ratios that are less than 50 are from the UK, and 2. Ratios that are more than 50 are from the US. I then had to design a decision procedure, which would decide if a sample is British or American. I constructed 3 decision trees which determined, for example, that if one corpus had more UK spellings than US spellings, then it would be a UK sample, and if not, then it would be a US sample. These decision trees will later be used to test the South Africa, Zimbabwe and Zambia corpora to see whether they use UK spellings or US spellings, and from this we can try to establish whether they have preferences in their English usage. This decision tree shows the application of the question, is frequency of COLOUR more than 5? The table on the left demonstrates that the UK samples all have the frequencies of COLOUR above 5, apart from one example, and the table of results on the right for the US samples shows that the occurrences of COLOUR do not exceed 5. This confirms that the decision tree works, as it is predicted that if the spelling is British, the corpus is British, and if the spelling is American, the corpus is American. It shows that with corpora, with results of more than 5 occurrences of the British spelling, this tree will accurately predict the corpus to be British 95% of the time. This decision tree shows the application of the question, is frequency of CENTRE more than the frequency of CENTER? This table shows that when the frequency of CENTRE was more than the frequency of CENTER, the text was British. According to these results, this particular tree could be up to 100% accurate. This final tree asks the question, is the ratio of NEIGHBOUR to NEIGHBOR less than 50? 95% of the results were accurate for this tree, as those ratios fewer than 50 were from the UK corpora, and those with ratios above 50 were from the US corpora. This tree shows that one of the UK samples has more examples of American neighbour than British neighbour. However, this is probably an anomaly, as the word is not frequently used in the corpus with either spelling. The previous tables show 3 successful decision trees, with one having 100% accuracy, and the other 2 having 95% accuracy. The decision trees are successful enough to now be used to test the South Africa, Zimbabwe, and Zambia corpora to see whether they prefer UK spelling, as with the UK corpora, as proven with the decision trees, or US spelling, as with the US corpora. I then carried out the same process as I did originally with the UK and US corpora, but this time I used the .ZA, .ZW, and .ZM corpora to find out the frequency of each feature in my chosen region. This image shows the frequency of COLOUR in the South African corpus. I then did the same with the US spellings. I used the decision trees that I devised earlier to test the frequency of each spelling to see which English each country prefers. This shows the application of the decision tree, its frequency of COLOUR more than 5. This table shows that with South Africa, Zimbabwe, and Zambia, they all answered yes because they do have a frequency over 5, and so according to the tree, they all prefer UK spelling. This shows the application of the decision tree, its frequency of CENTRE more than the frequency of CENTER. This table shows that with South Africa, Zimbabwe and Zambia, they all answered yes, as they do have a higher frequency of the spelling CENTRE than CENTER, and so according to this decision procedure, they all prefer UK spelling. This shows the application of the decision tree, its ratio of NEIGHBOUR to NEIGHBOR less than 50. This table shows that with Zimbabwe and Zambia, they do have a ratio of less than 50, and so according to this decision procedure, they prefer UK spelling. However, with South Africa, there were no occurrences of the word neighbour with either spelling, and so cannot be taken into account. To summarise these results, the first decision tree, its frequency of COLOUR more than 5, shows that all 3 countries have frequencies of COLOUR above 5, which means that it is more characteristic of British English. The second decision tree, its frequency of CENTRE more than the frequency of CENTER, shows that with all 3 countries, the frequency of the UK spelling CENTRE was more frequent than the US spelling, which means that it is more characteristic of British English. The third decision tree, is the ratio of English neighbour to American neighbour less than 50, shows that Zimbabwe and Zambia both have a ratio which is less than 50, which is characteristic of British English. There was one anomaly, as there were no examples of either English neighbour or American neighbour in the South African corpora, so this particular decision tree was inconclusive with South Africa. So overall, the decision trees all show that the 3 countries prefer British English spelling, which means that my prediction was accurate. This could be due to the fact that historically there has been more influence on South Africa and its culture from British people, resulting in more British English spellings being used on .za web pages. The tests devised and used on the data collected from the corpora do prove that these Southern African countries prefer British English. However, as this is only a small selection of just online texts, this does not fairly represent the Southern African attitude towards British English and its usage, as there is evidence to suggest that British English was resisted by previous generations of South Africans during colonisation, which may have influenced its usage by some generations in present-day Southern Africa. For further investigation to properly conclude upon which English spellings South Africa prefer, I would need to take into account other media, for example newspapers, magazines, literature, and possibly the spellings taught in schools to take a complete unbiased view of the South African English, as not everyone has access to or can input information onto the internet. However, in terms of this experiment using data mining, I can conclude that according to my corpora, South Africa, Zimbabwe and Zambia all prefer British English spelling. Thanks for listening to my presentation.